Jesus stayed on this couch even when I got up and could not come back because my flesh would not let me. It was just irritated by the beautiful presence that's here. But aren't we grateful for God's grace? Aren't we grateful that we can crawl back with all blood and stain and just be like, here I am, and he's here. Hi everyone, welcome back to Growing in Truth. It is your host, Diamante, and I am so grateful to be here. When I tell you that my spirit has been in a cage for the past few weeks, has been stuck in this place of stagnancy. Funny enough, I made a video on that, but clearly had not learned my lesson entirely, because God will always use our mouths, and then after we end up having to eat all the food that came out of our mouths. And it's very difficult to do that, I'm telling you right now. Growing in truth with you has been a lot different than I thought it would be. I have been trying to eat all the things that have been pouring out of my mouth, and then I started doing it without his spirit. And isn't that just a funny story? I can't wait to catch you guys up on all the things that God has been doing, how he has been working in my life to straighten me out, to straighten out my path, to make sure that I am not walking in any permissible will, but I am in his perfect will. And I hope you can align yourself to that in this moment, because it is not easy anymore, and I have found that. I have podcasts that I love. I have people that I love hearing God's voice through, and I can't find myself sitting still to listen to them for the life of me. All because I was feeding my flesh too much, hence our video title today. So I want you to align yourself to where I'm at, because it's not easy being here as a listener or a speaker. So let's pray together. Let's unite and make sure that his presence abides with us, so that our spirits are the ones in full control. Amen? Take my hand. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord. We always come first just grateful that we can be still with you. Grateful that we do not have to come up with any plan. We don't have to execute our own desires, our own ways. We do not have to stress by human strength. We don't have to stress about our limits or our weaknesses, because you and you alone are the one that takes full control of our strength. You take full control of desire and power, and you pour into us. You revive us. You bring us to a place of stillness where we're able to listen to you. So Father, I pray over the person that's listening right now, that you simply grab onto their mind, comfort them, grab onto their hearts, and slow down their heartbeat so that they are able to listen to your voice more clearly, God. We know that this is a generation and this is a people that want to know you, that want to seek you, that want to hear you. So we're asking that you just pour life over this person. Pour life over their hands, over their eyes, over their ears, that they're able to listen closely to your will. Listen closely to what you desire over their lives. And may they be able to carry out all things that are spoken today. May they be able to live for you, truly live for you as a living sacrifice, giving up what needs to be given up and walking perfectly in your will, not out of our own human effort, but out of your perfect, beautiful strength. We love you, Father. I love you. And I thank you for having my heart on this open platter in front of them so that they can see the work that you're doing even in me. I love you, Father. We trust you. We trust that you will speak. You will remain. And in Jesus' name, may your spirit abide with us. Amen. As you can see, even my prayers have changed. It's been so much. I just want to debrief everything with you. I had a beautiful time with meeting up with, I could say, an old friend. I say old friend, but really she's my old youth leader, and actually old youth pastors, because her husband was there as well. And they are a couple that is near and dear to my heart. I adore them. I think that at the time when they were my leaders, I I was a little, not too rebellious. I was a little bit of a rebellious teen. So I do remember giving them a very hard time, but when I reunited with them, there was almost just this spark of like, oh my goodness, our spirits are in the same place right now. We're actually moving both towards God's will. It's no longer you telling me, yo, get it together. It's now us being able to share what God is doing in both of our lives. So during this reunion, I was very much in a place of, oh, this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm going to probably walk out the same, and I'll be good. It's fine. It's a safe place. Tell me how. Something that came up in that conversation was a clear highlight on a certain pride that I'm carrying. And mind you, it was not given to me in anger. It wasn't given to me harshly. It was said with such grace. But it made me evaluate everything in my life. And I, from that moment, started evaluating my prayer life. And something that I found is that my prayer life was very prideful. Now, why was my prayer life prideful? How can a prayer life be prideful if everything that we do is posturing before God and seeking His voice and trying to find His face and His will and all these things? But you know, even when you're physically postured, your heart can still be so prideful. Your mind can still be so arrogant to His voice and to His will. That's why you can be postured and still be so frustrated. You can be postured and feel like you are going absolutely nowhere because your pride is quite literally not letting your spirit be the one that's listening and doing all the things within you. And that's where I was like, Lord, how am I going to change this? I want to surrender my pride. I don't want to be a prideful person, especially in your kingdom, especially in your presence. I'm literally sitting in front of a camera offering my life, saying, Lord, if you want to expose every mistake I've made, do it just so that they can find freedom and realize that they are not alone in this. But if I've done that, then I also have to put on a platter that I have been prideful. I have prayed all about me. I have thought that I could lose words while I pray. That was a big symptom. That was a big fat symptom, is that I thought I could lose words while I pray. I would literally be praying for 5 minutes and be like, okay, what else do I say? Well, obviously, there's not that much more to say about you. Now it's time to fight for others. But anyways, I digress in that area. I say it because I was seeking out how to better my prayer life. I met with my best friend, had an amazing conversation with her, and then I see even more how much I've been missing out on. How much more I could have found in the secret place if I had just found stillness. But for some reason, my flesh was always under control. And this is where God started ministering to me. Because that week, I was not as busy. But then the week after, and the week after that, busyness grew at a 1,000%. I spent that week seeking His presence, right? I'm asking Him, I'm giving you my time. I'm not going to have any agenda. I'm not even going to expect you to speak to me in any sort of way. I just want to sit with you. And then I'd start thinking about His names. That was the big thing. That was the big bonus, I want to say, is that I got to know a lot of His names. And I just start declaring all these names over this secret time. And that's when I started really seeing His face. I really started seeing His presence. And my spirit almost started waking up in me. Like to the point where involuntarily I'm running into things in my daily life and I'm literally thinking about lessons. And that's how you know your spirit is very alive. Is when you can go about your daily life and you are just hearing His voice back and forth telling you about this and how does this apply to your life. Even down to the smallest thing, even down to the smallest item or situation, you can find His presence. But you can't do that when your flesh is fully controlling you, fully dominating you, and leading you everywhere that you go. So my goal that week was to discover His name, more and more of His names. Start actually growing to know His names every day. And then as I grow in his name, I was meant to surrender my flesh and allow my spirit to take over. We got to Saturday. And, because mind you, I had this conversation with my best friend on Tuesday. And I get to Saturday, and I'm already down in the dumps again. I'm already feeling so discouraged about my will, my call, my everything. I feel very broken, very lost, feel like nothing's working. I'm already in a place of stagnancy, I guess you could say. I'm already one day without praying, and I'm already like, yeah, I'm done. And when I tell you, God was just revealing to me, and he gave me this topic, an overly fed flesh. I start meditating on that thought. Didn't understand it because, well, he was gonna put me through it the next week. Next week comes around, I'm quite literally busy day to day. Like from the moment I rise to when I get home at midnight. I'm literally all day doing stuff for my banners, for the business. I'm doing stuff for the book. I'm doing stuff for ministry at my church. I'm doing a lot of these things. And I'm just like, okay, the plans are taking over my prayer life. It's okay. I'll get back. And I let myself for 1 week, literally 1 week, not pray. In the midst of me not praying, I'm eating every day. But when I tell you, oddly, overeating. It was starting to feel like warfare. It was starting to feel like warfare. I was like, why am I craving so much? Why is my appetite so heightened? I'm overeating. I'm constantly on social media, scrolling any moment I can, like as if it's a cigarette break. I am scrolling because that's my only sense of relief. It's my only way of releasing and being like, okay, I don't have to think about anything. On top of that, I'm doing absolutely nothing to go into his presence. Anytime I thought about his presence, I would think about going to get a snack. Or I would think about going to lay down and rest and sleep and do something. Like I got entitled in the midst of my busyness. I was like, I deserve rest. And then God's whisper was just like, who said you can't rest with me? Oh, I've been resting away from you. So, all of this brought me to about these past 2 weeks. I have been overly feeding my flesh. In the midst of busyness, I can tell what pressure does. Pressure either causes you to want to look back to the very things that you want to let go, tried to let go, or you did let it go and you just don't want to look back. Pressure will do that. It'll try to have you looking back. To the point where in the midst of me overtly feeding my flesh, you know how many temptations popped up? Being like, I should reopen the door that I literally cried on my knees for the Lord to free me from. All of this lust that I literally cried out to the Lord to free me from. The minute pressure arrived to my life, I'm like, you know what? Let me turn back. Let me go back because that sounds good. I'm like, okay, people of Israel, and I'm over here judging them that they literally saw such a great, beautiful miracle of seeing the Red Sea split, and then just a couple days pass, and because you're hungry, you're like, I want to go back to slavery. As if the big miracle that God did is not the most eye-opening thing ever. And then, of course, my pastor preaches about how that exact thing happens to us. Literally this past Sunday. He's like, it matters that you remember what God has done so that in the midst of that pressure, you do not forget and you do not start doubting and you don't start turning back to the things that you let go. He didn't say all that verbatim, but I know my spirit was like, reminding me, hello, look at the work that God is doing. Look at the lesson that he just told you about a few weeks ago. Why are you already forgetting? Why? Because the pressure will naturally bring you to a place where you feel like you need to turn back to the thing that comforted you. As if comfort can't be found in his presence. So I learned a lot of things in this whole process. All of July, I'm learning a lot. Mind you, this epiphany just came right now. Beginning of July, and I posted this, I went on vacation. That was my way of resting. Then throughout July, so much busyness happened that it was almost a test of where I would rest. Bar! Are you kidding me? Now I have to write another poem. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. And what's crazier is that I'm reading you a poem right now. I wrote a poem in the midst of all of this because God said, your flesh is overly fed. You are so consumed. In fact, I can tell you right now how he said my flesh is overly fed. I have my journal here. First, he told me how I was poorly stewarding the small. Already crying. The little things that he was giving me, the little grace that he was sprinkling over my life, I wasn't even stewarding that well. Big sign that my flesh is in full control. I was planning more than I was executing. How many of us are good planners but execute nothing? How many of us come up with all of these ideas and have all of these things saved in our Instagram and our TikTok and everywhere? We have all these ideas saved, all these screenshots of things that we're gonna do, things that we're gonna start, and then we simply don't ever do it because we're good planners and not good executors. The flesh loves doing that to you. You know why? Because the flesh is even smart. I more mean darkness is even smart in telling you half of what you could do and then placing a bunch of fear and doubt over you so that you never really do what you're called to do. I believe darkness has this agenda to make your flesh dominate you in a way where you will literally witness what God could or could have done in your life. It will give you a little teaser by letting you plan some things, letting you plan how you'll change, letting you plan how your life will be different, letting you plan this little 30-day thing or this 7-day thing or this fast that you plan on doing. Everything is a plan. Everything is I'll do it tomorrow. The flesh loves doing that to you, loves torturing you like that so that you'll see a little glimpse of what God could do in your life, but you never really achieve it because your spirit, at least in your flesh's mindset, your spirit will never be in control. So if your spirit's never in control, you'll never really get to God's will. But your flesh wants you to at least trust it enough that you'll think, oh, I can plan this. Oh, then it must be true. I'll be able to do it by my strength, by my will, by my timing. And then the flesh just tricks you. So many things that I, spiritually speaking, not when I say fleshly things, like I'm not just speaking of worldly stuff. The flesh will literally manipulate you to think that it is your spirit. Your flesh will try to do things that mimic what your spirit would do if it was in control. That's why your flesh is okay with coming up with plans, but it will never fully execute them. I digress. That's just a big thing for me because I have so many things saved and many things incomplete. Crazy. Oh my goodness, this is a big one. You will be so spiritually unsatisfied, yet you won't even realize it because of how distracted you are. You ever get so hungry, like you're starving? You're literally starving, but you can't tell until after you do all the work that you do. There are days that I wake up and I have nothing to do throughout the day. Not actually, but you know, it's all under my plan or my control. So I could literally wake up when I want, and then thank God I don't have to go anywhere at night, so I can go to sleep when I want. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I can sleep in and I'll do whatever. When I have woken up with no plan, I wake up hungry. That's funny. And then when I wake up, and there are days that I automatically have a task to do in the morning, afternoon, night, and I don't get back until really late, and that's when I'm hungry. I only get hungry when I have time to realize I'm hungry. And doesn't that make sense? Because every part of your body's already doing something else, so if you're busy, you're not going to realize you're hungry until after the fact. And that's how I think it is spiritually. You are so spiritually unsatisfied, but you're not going to realize it until you are almost towards death. You're not going to realize it until, or maybe you do realize it, but you're not going to actually cater to it until you're no longer distracted. So take away the distractions for a minute. Take this away. Act like you're on a power outage, actually. Take away everything that could be distracting you and allow yourself to see what in the world is actually happening within you. Because I'm telling you right now, that is where God's evaluations can change your life. You need to open your eyes to those things. And don't let yourself not see when you're starving. It literally all starts with one day, by the way. It only starts with one day of inconsistency leading to another. All it takes is one day where you're like, I'm not going to pray today. I'm not going to acknowledge him. And you know what? There are days like that where maybe you spend less time with him. But if you're married to someone, you're going to acknowledge them every single day because, well, you sleep with them. You sleep beside them, or at least you should. You sleep in the same house as them. You're with them all the time. So it makes no sense to be in this covenant, be in this closeness with the Father and not acknowledge him all day. You need to acknowledge him at least the minute you wake up. Don't let there be any inconsistencies. And don't be hard on yourself when there is a day that you're inconsistent. Because then that could impede you from tomorrow's glory, where you wake up and you're back to the consistency. Don't let your flesh dictate when you walk into God's presence. That is what I'm learning, a lot of what I'm learning. I was giving my eyes to a lot of entertainment instead of stillness. I was eating much more than necessary. I was procrastinating. Oh my goodness, the procrastination to do what God is telling me to do. Crazy. I was letting my flesh impact my response. Whenever I felt God calling me to prayer or calling me to read, it was like my flesh was the first one being like, no, I don't want to. I'll do it later. Everything is I'll do it later. My goodness. Searching for ways to slip into sin. I talk about this in my book. Eventually, you'll be able to hear much more about this. But I've grown to understand that when you let go of something, yet you secretly want it back, but you don't want to admit that you want it back, you start almost setting up traps to have it back so that it's not on you or blamed on you, or you are not held accountable for being the one that allowed this thing back into your life. I think that's a moment of silence because it's crazy how we work as human beings. When we want something back that we said we were going to let go, that we said and promised we would never touch again, we'd never turn back to again, the minute we are under pressure, the minute that we are desiring comfort again, wanting to go back to these things, oftentimes, maybe we are bold enough to be like, nah, I'm just going to go back. I'll own up to it, you know? But then there are other times because we don't want to own up to it, because we don't want to own up to slipping up, then we almost set traps, open the time, create the space, so that we aren't to blame. We can just blame it on the temptation. But that's not how this works. You can't manipulate God. I'm telling you right now, you cannot manipulate God. Your flesh thinks that you can do that. You cannot manipulate God. You know how many moments within this time of pressure where I'm home and I have access again to look things up that I was once looking up? You know how many times I literally would walk into my room, close my door, and be like, well, I see my headphones. Maybe if I just put them closer to the end of my bed. Maybe if I just scroll for a little bit and I run into something, you know, I can't help it. And I would literally hear God tell me, I'm not going to be the one tempting you. So if you fall into this, it's on you. Oh, it's the most enraging thing. But it's a very good truth to download. You can't blame any slip up on God. He's not the one tempting you. Read James. He's not the one tempting you. Sorry, James 1, let me be specific. He's not the one tempting you. He is, in fact, the one drawing you closer to be with him, reminding you, come back to me. Anyways, I digress again. Listening to every desire of your flesh, oh my goodness, even when it interrupts what God is saying. That's everything, that's everything. Avoiding fasting. Guys, if your flesh is in full control of you, where every desire is being fulfilled, it's even interrupting your time with the Lord, fast. I'm telling you right now, fast. In fact, I've been doing this thing where not all the time, so I'm not exposing too much, but again, growing in truth with you, I make sure that when I wake up, my first priority is not to eat anything, because my first priority needs to be seeking his presence. If his presence is not the first thing in my mouth, then that's an issue, because then my flesh can easily take control. So you need to start fasting. And even if you need to incorporate this thing that's like, I refuse to eat until I reach his presence, do that. Oh my goodness, that's so helpful. Literally do it. It is so, so helpful to fast. And there are no excuses to fasting. You can fast anyway. There's no way to avoid fasting or make excuses for it. That is your flesh, I promise you right now. I know that there are people that are like, there are health issues, things in the way. There's always a way to dedicate a fast. There's always a way. So however the Lord is leading you to, specifically from food, fast. Oversharing and gossiping and letting worries lead me to escapism. All of these things were feeding my flesh. And I said all of them honestly because I would love for you to evaluate, how are you feeding your flesh? Because I notice a lot can be done without his spirit. So sometimes it can take a little bit to notice that there's not anything being fulfilled in your life, but there's a lot of things being done. How is that? And I genuinely, I'm learning that your spirit, living a life without being under the control of your spirit, can quite literally complete things and make them like finish. You can make them be done. The task is done. But nothing will fulfill you without his spirit. And that's where I ran into a flesh overly fed. And I realized that my flesh was wanting to quite literally starve my spirit. And that's why for these past 2 weeks, I've had this battle of my cravings. When I tell you, ever since I had done a certain fast, it was a Daniel fast, my body wasn't craving food the way that it was before. Like, I started seeing food as just something that sustains my body, but I didn't see it as I did before. Not the glutton that I was before, saving every video that had to do with a meal and making sure so that I could cook it later. But really, I would just be watching those videos whenever I was hungry. That is how I knew, okay, my flesh is being too fed. Because now my spirit is not fed. Now my flesh is overly fed to the point where I'm literally physically waking up full. Because I had been eating at night. And mind you, I'd already told myself I wasn't going to eat at night anymore. But I found myself eating at night again. And I was like, oh, this is bad. This is not okay. Something's happening spiritually. The enemy doesn't want me to gain a truth here. Let me share with you the truth. A flesh overly fed. Again, this is a poem written by me. And again, it was in the midst of all of this trial and tribulation. A flesh overly fed will make me devourable and leave me dead. It will taint the purpose of my bed, causing lust and laziness to consume my head. It takes away the clarity of the words you've said. It makes me forget all the revelations I've read. It seems so easy to choose idols instead. A flesh overly fed abandons the spirit in me to groan with dread. He cries for the Son to forgive me by the blood he shed. It was his body that bled, so I could have good news to spread. But here I am in my bed, a flesh overly fed, possessing enough sin to leave my faith hung by a thread, knowing that you didn't call my belief to lightly thread. Hello? To lightly tread. Knowing you didn't call my belief to lightly tread. You command my spirit to heal my faith by eating bread. You demand my flesh to leave the throne room and take its impurities off my bed. You silence my mind to listen for the words you've already said. You remind my heart of the vows you gave on the day we wed. Suddenly my flesh is forced to pick up my written vows that it tried to shred. With mumbled groans it took the place of a beggar and pled. When I said no to its requests, it fled. My flesh will no longer be fed, for by the Spirit's power its authority is dead. Ed. I love poems. I love poems. I think every part of this poem reflects what I was feeling in the midst of a flesh overly fed. I'm literally feeling the weight of my flesh dictating where I go, to the point where I can feel that the blood that Jesus bled for me is no longer being utilized to wipe me clean every day. It literally brought me to a place where I'm consuming carbs, but not his bread. I'm quite literally being left stuck in my head, dying in dread. I'm left for dead. I love everything about that poem. I find it so funny that I got stuck on shred, which is so funny because that line, I was like, Lord, what in the world? I'm telling you, words that rhyme. I sit in prayer and I'm like, how did you come up with this? And he's like, I created it all. Hello. But I'm writing shred and I'm like, what does that mean again? So it's so funny that that was the word that I stumbled on. But when you lightly tread in your faith, it's quite literally that your faith is so scared to move that you don't move by his Spirit, you're moving by your flesh. All of this brought me to Romans 8. Oh, how did you guess it? We were in Romans 8 a while ago. I've learned a lot from Romans 8, things that I didn't think I would be able to take from Romans 8 because my focus was always on the sinful nature. But it reminds us in verse 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to read all of them. Those who are dominated by sinful nature think about sinful things. Already, I want to quickly put a parenthesis. When it says that things are dominated by your sinful nature, you think about sinful things. Don't just think about the typical sins. Don't think about actions. Don't think about just a certain thing. Think about the fact that sin has everything to do with separation. Sometimes when I read the word, I think about sin as separation, so I'll sometimes replace it. So those who are dominated by sinful nature think about things that separate them. Think about things that literally separate them from their time with the Lord, separate them from being fed in the Lord, and separate them from walking in holiness with the Lord. That is what it is to live in your sinful nature. So do not get so caught up in the things that you consider as sin, because quite literally anything that separates you from God's presence is part of the sinful things. So you shouldn't be letting those things dominate you. But those who are controlled by the Spirit think about things that please the Spirit, hence closeness, genuineness, vulnerability. So letting your sinful nature control your mind, letting separation control your mind leads to death. What does that even mean? Letting the things that separate you from his presence control your mind leads to death. But letting the Spirit control your mind leads to life and peace. And I had a dear friend of mine emphasizing the peace part, and I was like, you know what? Precisely. Because when we walk in the Spirit and we are not overly feeding our flesh, we live a life of peace. You know why? Because your flesh is always there to confuse you, always there to manipulate, always there to give excuses, always there to silence the purpose that you're meant to walk in. But when you let your Spirit control your mind, when you let him align your priorities, you're going to live a life of peace. For the sinful nature is always hostile to God. The things that separate you from God's presence is always hostile to him. It never did obey God's law and it never will. I get excited because this matters. This matters. When we read that the sinful nature is always hostile, it never obeyed God's law and it never will. let me unite something with you. We're going to jump to the text in a second, but I just want to put something in perspective. If you have all of these good intentions, right? You have all of these good intentions to follow the faith, to obey the Lord, to live for Him, to do good things for Him. But your sinful nature is always hostile. It's always disobedient to His law, and it never plans to be obedient to His law. If you live for your flesh, if you feed your flesh every day, if you do not listen to a lick of what the Spirit's telling you, what are your good intentions going to save you from? I'm telling you right now, I know so many believers, and I hear it all the time on social media. I hear all of these good intentions. I hear all of these people saying, I am so frustrated with myself. I just want to follow Him, but it's so hard. It's so difficult. Everything is now about how hard it is to follow God, but everyone is just pointing back to their good intentions. They're like, I meant to follow Him. I want to obey Him, but no part of me wants to stay with Him, and it's just so hard. Maybe if you would stop feeding your flesh, it wouldn't feel like your good intentions are failing you. Because, well, your good intentions were never strong enough to bring you to a life of faith anyways. It literally says it here. Your sinful nature was always going to disobey God. So if you live in a body that its default is to be separated from God, then why are you going to be so discouraged when you see that your body doesn't want to live for Him? The Word is literally telling us that our flesh, its default ideas, its default desires is to be far away from His law. And if that is the case, then your good intentions, which come from your human effort, your good intentions come from yourself, your own strength, your own will. So when you don't submit those good intentions and give your spirit the opportunity to strengthen them, and you only depend on yourself in order to be strong and obey Him, of course you're going to fail. Every single time you're going to fail. But thank God for His Spirit. Thank God for His Spirit. That's why those who are still under the control of their sinful nature can never please God. Do you remember Hebrews 11? Hebrews 11, the very first thing that it says is that faith is what pleases God. Faith is the exact thing that pleases God. So wait, because this goes deeper then. And this is why I love combining texts. If faith is what pleases God, and those who are under the control of their sinful nature can never please God, then what does that say about your faith when you allow your sinful nature, hence your flesh, to consume everything that you do and dominate your decisions? You're not going to have faith. You're not going to live a life of faith. You're going to live in doubt. You're going to live without peace. You're going to live quite literally under the control, or I should say the domination of your flesh. You're going to literally just keep overfeeding your fleshly desires, and mind you, fleshly desires are so selfish, and I'm not calling you selfish. I'm saying your flesh is naturally so selfish that no matter how much you give it, it always wants more. So when you are living for your flesh, that's also why you lack peace. That's also why you lack peace in your daily decisions or the things that you're feeding yourself. That's why even when you scroll and you have those thoughts cross your mind, like maybe I should be obedient. Maybe I should go be somewhere else. Those little whispers that you hear, consider it the groanings of your spirit being like, yo, wake up. You have to be somewhere else right now. Because this is not it. This is not where you need to be, because you're going to starve and you're going to live far away from peace. And I love what it says in verse 12. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, you have no obligation to do what your sinful nature urges you to do. For if you live by its dictates, you will die. But if through the power of your spirit you put to death the deeds of your sinful nature, if you put to death the acts of your sinful nature, the decisions of your sinful nature, by the power of the Spirit, You quite literally will live. You will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. I love it, I love it, I love it. This is where we are reminded we live in a flesh that is, its default is literally to disobey, to create excuses, to be ignorant and arrogant, which is crazy. But again, it's prideful. How are we meant to live away from sin in bodies that its default is to live in sin or in separation? By feeding our spirit. That's the answer. By letting the Spirit control. Ooh, do you want to know what control means? This is what's crazy about control. People are going to hear that. And many people in the world hear, Christianity as this thing of control. Do you know what a remote control does? Let's act like this is a remote control. Whose hand is it in right now? Right. If I'm letting the Spirit control, it's still in my free will. Why are we acting like walking by the Spirit and letting the Spirit control what we do is like taking away our rights? It's not taking away our rights. We literally are still the ones in our free will choosing to let Him control our lives. What does control mean? Place boundaries over your life. It's the equivalent of a diet. It's the equivalent of a meal plan. It's the equivalent of literally anything that would be placing boundaries in your life so that you can live a healthy life. That is what letting the Spirit control you means. It means that you let Him place boundaries. Almost like you let Him place boundaries on your living habits. Instead of placing, all of these strict rules on your life, He's placing boundaries on your living habits. Letting everything be surrounded by God's will and His moderation. So that you're not just eating too much of anything. He's not saying, I don't want you eating any dessert. He's saying, eat dessert this day, but on this day, eat some fruit. And then this day you can eat dessert. And then this day you can eat fruit. He's literally bringing organization in your life. He's literally allowing you to still have the room to enjoy your life, because Ecclesiastes reminds me of this. Ecclesiastes literally says to enjoy our lives. Go read Ecclesiastes 12. It literally says while you're young, enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. He's not placing restrictions on you so that you would be miserable. He's literally placing these boundaries and parameters so that you can enjoy your life and not die. I'm about to jump out of my seat and jump through the camera. I literally can't do this, but like I can. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful when you start seeing the Spirit's work less dominating like your flesh is and more controlling like your spirit is. Because your spirit is a loving spirit. Your spirit is a guiding spirit. Your spirit isn't placing boundaries to limit you from having a fun life. He's allowing you to walk in wisdom. So as you walk in wisdom, this is where we have to consider that the Spirit's job literally is to balance out your comfort and your endurance. It's so that how much comfort you take in, it needs to be limited and balanced with the endurance of suffering. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die with how amazing that is. No standard is based on your terms or your satisfaction, but only God's will. His will for you is that you live a life that is limited and balanced to God's will and to your enjoyment. And eventually, God's will ends up being what you love. I love God's will over my life, but you know how much endurance it takes? I almost have to keep being reminded in the midst of the cost. I have to keep being reminded of the benefits. And I preached this once, actually. I talked about how God literally reminds us of our benefits every single time before we pay the cost, because He knows things are going to hurt. We're going to let things go. We're going to have to live in a way that is obedient to His presence and to the Spirit. But as we place these boundaries, as it begins to hurt, we will also find the benefits of living for his Spirit. This is not just a thing of domination. This is beautiful control, beautiful boundaries, and wisdom. And I'll end it with Galatians 5, because, again, your good intentions are never enough. But that's a good thing, because look at what Galatians 5 says. Living by the Spirit's power is literally the title of this section. Starting at verse 16. So I say, let the Holy Spirit guide your lives. Let him guard your lives too. I almost said that. Let the Holy Spirit guide your lives. Then you won't be doing what your sinful nature craves. The sinful nature wants to do evil, which is the opposite of what the Spirit wants. And the Spirit gives us desires that are the opposite of what your sinful nature desires. These two forces are constantly fighting each other, so you are not free to carry out your good intentions. I think that says it all. You are not free to carry out your good intentions, all because there is a real war happening inside of you. A real war that's trying to rip you of your priority, which is to make sure that your spirit remains alive in you. But I love what it says at the end, mind you. And I would really encourage you to read this section. Read Romans 8 as well. But if you read this section, it describes these sins or these acts of separation. And then it describes his fruit. And then at the very end, it says, since we are living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's lead in every part of our lives. You know how it ends? Let us not become conceited, or provoke one another, or become jealous of one another. That's its own theme for another day, but I'm telling you right now, even how you allow your spirit to guide you will, depending on how much control you give him, it will open the door to unity in your life with your relationships and your friendships, or division. Because when you do not walk by the Spirit and you walk by your flesh, you walk with judgment. Quite literally, your eyes are much more judgmental. Your eyes are much more angry and bitter, and everything is just so distasteful. And that's why it literally says within the list of sins, it literally says there's hostility and quarreling and jealousy and outbursts and all of this selfish ambition. All of this is because of your flesh. If you keep feeding your flesh the things that it wants, it will reap this fruit of separation. But when you allow your spirit to lead, to take the lead, you won't be conceited, you won't be jealous, you won't be bitter, and you won't be someone that is so angry. You will be able to live a life of beauty and mercy. So we have no obligation to be gluttons of our flesh. And a lot of these signs, I'll remind them again, a lot of the signs that you are overly feeding your flesh, physically, you're super dependent on food, your inability to fast, your addiction to even watching food, constantly craving more food, and you are hangry. We've normalized being hangry in this society to the point where the church finds it funny and cute. It's not cute. If you are someone that gets hangry, it's not a cute personality trait. I am someone that's gotten hangry before, and it's not a cute personality trait. To treat people like crap because there's no food in your stomach, that's just codependency on food, and that's gluttony. So that should not be normalized in the Christian culture. We should stop calling hangriness a cute little personality trait. Sorry, I just get angry. No, you're becoming bitter and angry because you're codependent on food. So do not overly feed your flesh. You need to learn how to be hungry and still be loving. And that's a fruit of his Spirit. So you don't have to worry about your good intentions. You can just let your Spirit take lead. You can have faith in who he is, and he will pour fruit over you that when you are hungry and you want to scream at everyone, he just silences everything, and he allows you to still bring peace and still bring joy. Mentally, you have a prideful relationship with time. I'm not going to dwell on that too long, But when you have a prideful relationship with time, it's that you feel and you live as if tomorrow's promised. So everything is for another time. You do not put the intention, or you know what? You do not put the obedience in for today. Because, well, your relationship with time is a little prideful, like as if it's yours. The inability to be present because you're constantly escaping through something else. You're always escaping. The thoughts that love busyness over stillness, the lustful mind that would rather be entertained, or the lack of priorities and ignorance to the conviction of the Spirit. You hear God's voice often telling you to not turn there and not do this, but it's ignored because, well, mentally, your overly fed flesh is the one dominating you. And spiritually speaking, you have a limited prayer life. You have a rushed heart of worship. You are an impatient listener. You can't even listen to people speaking about God for too long because it's just, when things get boring, you can't stay still. And you are a selfish reader. When you read the word, you're only interested when it has to do with you. Do not feed your flesh in this way. You know your flesh is getting fat when your spirit is fatigued. When you become senseless to overconsumption. When you literally don't care that you are feeling too full. You just keep going because your mouth is hungry. And I don't just mean physically. I mean even in spirit. You are receiving all these things. You're receiving all these things. And then draining it out because you're just escaping in other things. And then you're receiving more. Be careful with having Sundays be your day of fixing yourself. Because then throughout the week, when you don't acknowledge him, it just drains you out of everything that you took in on Sunday. And then Sundays become more about you and less about you uniting with the body for one vision, which is to extend the name of Jesus everywhere else. You've eaten more than you've given. You barely have fruit of the Spirit. That is so good because when you think about overeating, it's not like you're overeating good things. You're overeating things that, well, supply to your gluttony. Things that are filled with carbs and sugars and all these things. You barely have fruit of the Spirit when you are overeating. And you have lost sight of your purpose. You need to feed your spirit not with good intention, but with faith. And what type of faith? Read Philippians 2:13. For God is working in you, giving you the desire and power to do what pleases him. He's the one giving you desire and power. You don't have to seek out your good intentions. You don't have to trust yourself because, well, we trust in him. That is what trusting in God is. We have that on mugs and t-shirts and everywhere, but trusting in God literally is that you do not allow your good intentions to be the thing that guides you into his presence. You don't sit down on your knees and say, okay, Lord, I intend to receive from you today. I'm going to read your word. I'm going to do this. Everything's just under your control. When you go into his presence, how you trust him is saying, Lord, you are Jehovah Rapha. You are Elohim. You are Adonai. You are everything to me. Trusting you. You look at him first. You don't even think about your needs. Don't think about the prayer requests. Trusting him first. And then he guides you. He guides you on every request. Guides you on every desire. And then soon after, when you read the word, he's now guiding you on where to go. Guiding you on what to read even when you think it doesn't apply to you. He guides you to these videos that you should be listening to, guides you to these friendships that you should be cultivating. He guides you to the relationship that's meant for you. He guides you to the family that you're supposed to be praying for and fighting for. He guides you to everywhere you have to go. That is what it is to seek the kingdom first, and everything else will be given. You literally just have to look at him and not think about yourself. Don't be conceited. Don't be filled of your own human effort and intentions. Look at him, and everything else will be given. I know that having a flesh overly fed is so easy. Oh my goodness, even today before I was recording, I told the Lord, I'm not going to feed my flesh at all. I'm not going to let it eat. I'm not going to let it look at social media. I'm not going to let it look anywhere because I need you. That is the type of surrender that I believe we should go into every day. And if you can't go in every day, every other day. Just make some sort of consistency and move by His Spirit. I love you guys. I hope that this was edifying. I hope that this was something that you could take in and truly allow yourself to become convicted in. This is not something that you have to start now making impulsive changes. This is something you let it be sown into your life. Walk slowly. Slow down for His presence. And let Him be the one to orchestrate every ounce of transformation that you need in your life. I love you guys so much. And I pray that you continue to grow in truth with me. I will be trying my very best. I don't know if many of you know, I'm currently unemployed, currently trusting the Lord with my finances. So we are going to keep growing in truth, keep putting out there His words. And may you guys just see me more often. That's the hope, is that you can see me now in the month of August more often. Anyways, I love you guys. I will hopefully see you next week or in the next video.